Up next on The Way of the Renaissance Man, Fakebook or Facebook? A debate with Kerry Lutz on the virtue of stupidity. Welcome to The Way of the Renaissance Man podcast. This is a show about ideas, personal empowerment, and celebrating the rational life. Our goal is to help each other discover the tools needed to better focus our minds, integrate our thoughts with actions, and live the lives we really want. I'm your host, Jim Woods. I'm here with Kerry Lutz of the Financial Survival Network.
And it's a pleasure to be here with you, Jim.
Thank you, thank you. Now, I was on your show, which I recommend to everyone, by the way, and we talked, and this was a couple months ago, and it was during the whole Mark Zuckerberg inquisition, as I call it. But I was more, I kind of took the position that I thought Mark Zuckerberg was being unfairly treated. And I know I was in a minority position amongst my peers, but yeah, and you and I talked about, you talked about the fake book, as it were.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
But that's how we first got introduced, and it was a good conversation. And your podcast is a thinking man's podcast, and that's why I wanted you to be on the Way of the Renaissance Man podcast.
Hey, well, thank you. And we try to get people to think. Unfortunately, nowadays, somebody asked me, "What's your biggest gripe in society?" And honestly, when I think about it, stupidity has become a virtue. People are proud to be stupid. And whether that's not reading anything, not taking the time to become informed, whatever it might be, people like being stupid. And, when I grew up, and stupidity was somewhat frowned upon. And, it was something to aspire not to be. But now people proudly wear it, whether it's political, cultural, whatever. They don't really try to grow as people, become the Renaissance man, keep learning, keep improving yourself. It's like, hey, I'm stupid. I'm going to stay stupid. I'm proud to be stupid. And if you don't like it, well, hey, you're stupid too.
Right. Or you're just a privileged white guy that wasn't responsible for his own success.
Yeah, well, you didn't build that,
Right.
So, hey, and when we look at what Zuckerberg went through, okay, yeah, he accomplished a lot. Now he's the second wealthiest guy in the world and all that. But if that was an inquisition, then I don't know what they were doing in Spain in the 1400s, because, man, that guy, he would have been put on the water wheel.
Right.
He would have been on the rack. They would have been dismembering this guy one limb at a time for the crimes he's committed and continues to commit.
Well, I'll admit there was a bit of hyperbole to call it an inquisition.
A little bit, just slightly.
I mean, he's in one piece, and he still lives in a whole block worth of mansions.
Happily so,
yeah.
And thinking up new ways to twist the minds of the American public, to distort your perception of reality, and to generally just try to toss you into the garbage heap of humanity that's rapidly accumulating.
You can tell Kerry's a big Facebook fan by the... Now, what about the stock? Do you own the stock? I know you do.
Well, what I said last time when they were grilling him, I'd call it a light grill, like maybe 2 burners on the charcoal grill, maybe 2. But when they were roasting him a little bit, my thesis of the company then was sell Zuckerberg, buy the stock, because there's still no better platform for advertising, for finding the mind-numb robots, unthinking people that you're looking for whatever your business might be. There's no better place to do it than Fakebook, and some people call it Forestbook, but just understand that they're trying to program you. There's an agenda, and they're trying to get you to consciously or unconsciously shut off the thinking switch and just march on into oblivion. So, but that doesn't mean that if you've got a business, it's not a good place to advertise.
Right. Now, what about that? I mean, how do you go about helping people kind of have that filter on? You got a cynical filter that I like, because it's important to be cynical. Part of being a Renaissance man is someone who's skeptical of bullshit claims. We don't need that. And how do you go about doing that?
Well,
Is it just your nature?
It's my nature because, look, my father kind of taught me to hate the government at a young age. He was in World War II, and he was transporting stuff over Mount Everest and B-24s, risking his life. And then, the war was coming to an end, and he noticed that the type of cargo he was taking, it was no longer armaments, it was ketchup, it was feminine hygiene products and condoms. And he said, I am risking my life in this piece of crap plane flying over Mount Everest just to... The war effectively became a corporatist endeavor. He was taking these products to China, Burma, spreading the American way, and he just said, I'm not going to do this. So he set about, he knew that if he refused to fly anymore, and the way they had done it is, hey, volunteer, just like Catch-22, volunteer and you get to go home early. And he did that twice, and then when they changed the hours that he had to fly the third time, he said, that's it, I've had it. So he would just basically sabotage the plane, bring it out to the runway, end of the runway, blow out an engine, say, hey, I can't fly this plane, it's no good. Or, the captain always inspects the plane, and if there's something wrong with it, he doesn't have to fly. And they call him out to the press, and they say, we know what you're doing. He says, I don't know what you're talking about. Give me a decent plane, and I'll fly it. So finally, they didn't know whether to court-martial him, promote him, or send him home. They sent him home. But from that point on, he always hated the government, never took any garbage from petty bureaucrats, and that was the house I grew up in.
You grew up in the modern day Yossarian.
yeah, except he beat Catch-22. He got to go home. He didn't have to fly till he died.
That book was, since you brought it up, that book was particularly brilliant because it was one of the first books that actually criticized the most popular war in American history.
Oh, like my father would tell me when I was younger, he hated the government because they lie to you. And it's like, what the heck is he talking about? Everything seems to be working okay to me. But then when I got older, I learned that was the case. The government can't survive unless it lies. And so the key is to understand that you're susceptible to the lies. There was a story that I just loved, and I wanted it so badly to be true that it suspended my critical thinking, and that was Nanny Bloomberg, who wanted to ban double-gulp sodas. He supposedly went into a pizzeria, and he had a slice of pizza, a place in Brooklyn, well known for their pie, really great place. And then he asked for a second slice, and the owner of the pizzeria said, no, Your Honor, you're looking a little chunky. You shouldn't have that second slice of pizza. So this is a great story. You just want that to be true. Turned out to be a made-up story. I reported it. Had to sheepishly admit to the audience that got that one wrong. So you can still get taken. So the key is not to let the father of the wish be the father of the thought. Think critically. Who's trying to tell me this? What do they have to gain? Why do they want me to think this way? Kind of like everything that being a progressive liberal isn't.
Right. Well, that's. I'm glad you mentioned that, because one of the biggest challenges in the so-called fake news era is figuring out what's true, what's not true. I mean, if you don't have a good filter, if you're not skeptical, if you're not critical, if you're not examining the facts from maybe possibly more than what they are, you're going to fall victim to the persuasion that the powers that be want you to be persuaded of, whether that's being convinced to buy something, convinced to buy a trade war, convinced to buy some kind of idea that men aren't men and women aren't women. It all kind of comes down to that. And I think that's one of the critical, that's why I wanted to have you on, because I like your skeptical attitude. I like your humorous take on things, because that's another thing. You got to laugh. You got to enjoy life by laughing.
How many lefties do you know that actually have a sense of humor? You watch Jimmy Fallon, or you watch one of these shows, the first 10 minutes are anti-Trump jokes. Now, hey, if you make a joke about his hair or his skin or whatever, there's a lot to laugh about for the guy, I will tell you that, but not solely the only topic of your humor for 45 minutes in a show. It's absurd. But sense of humor is really important, and there's a lot to laugh at. And that the fact is, the left doesn't have a sense of humor because they can't take ridicule, and large parts of the right don't have a sense of humor either, just try making a joke at their expense, and not personal, like, you know, your wife is ugly, or, you know, whatever. It just make a joke and see what happens, and you'll probably get a snarl back, or anger, or, you know, just you know, blown off.
Everybody thinks everyone thinks everyone else should be less sensitive, but then when they get attacked, they're very sensitive about it, and that's something that I want to try to make sure my listeners do not fall victim to. Have a thick skin, and you know the facts, know what you're doing, and be confident in yourself. And that is the path to being a Renaissance man.
Yeah, because look, you put yourself out there. We all do. We're going to get comments from people that are, you know, somewhat nasty. You know, like some guy once said, you know, making fun of my sinus problems on YouTube, which actually was kind of funny. I still remember it. You got to have a thick skin, and if you're willing to take shots at other people or things or movements or beliefs, then you got to be willing to have people take shots at yours as well.
Well, there's a famous, well, it's not that famous, but it's famous to me. The punk rock icon Henry Rollins wrote in a song, "The ones who never do anything are always the ones that want to try to put you down."
Yeah,
I think that's good.
Those who can do, those who can't teach, and those who can't teach teachers.
Right.
and if you can't do any of that, then you become a critic, a media critic, an art critic, a movie critic, whatever. If you're really totally lost out at everything in life, can't create content, then you just put it down, and you have a ready-made career, because, you know, the mind-numb masses want to enjoy somebody being destroyed or put down.
Right.
But all humor basically is at somebody else's expense to some extent. Now, there's humor that's totally off, and just like out of bounds. And to me, that's a lot of like Howard Stern's humor when he makes fun of people who have had some type of traumatic event happen in their career, whatever. Some politician who gets caught doing something he or she shouldn't have, you know. So, look, some of the humor is fair game, whatever the foible of the day is, but kicking people when they're down, that's not funny to me.
Yeah.
So,
one of the a good rule to end on is don't kick people when they're down, and don't believe the BS that you hear from most channels.
yeah,
Agree?
Agreed. And treat everybody kindly on your way up, because you're going to meet the same people on your way back down.
Excellent. How can people find you on the internet? Financial Survival Network.
Oh, that's easy. Just go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. All 5,000 of my shows are in the archives, as well as articles that I write from time to time, like don't fly with affirmative action pilots.
I say go there. You might agree, you might disagree, but your mind will be open. Thanks a lot, Kerry.
Hey, my pleasure.